transnational gangs, it's all about drugs and money. And they are destroying our country. They are destroying our children. And a lot of this fentanyl, as we know, is made, the precursors in China. They're coming in our country through Mexico and now other places. And under Donald Trump, it's going to stop because he has secured our borders, Senator Lee.
And we're very grateful for that effort. It's interesting to note, moreover, that under the leadership of your predecessor, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and others who routinely appeared before this committee, when asked about the human smuggling operation going on across our southern border, routinely denied that fentanyl was coming in significant quantities through the human trafficking operation. They stated never with any evidence, never with any ability to back it up, to prove this was the case, that these things were coming across the points of entry through vehicles, through trucks, and otherwise. We know that not to be true, and we appreciate your work in exposing that. Now, in recent months, going along with this law enforcement effort, there's been a disturbing trend. It's a disturbing trend that seems to be on the increase in recent days and weeks. That is a rise of violence directed at federal law enforcement officers engaged in immigration-related arrests, including direct physical threats, organized riots outside of detention facilities, and most tragically, of late, a fatal shooting targeting an ICE facility in Dallas. Then just yesterday, it was reported that a cartel member in Chicago put a bounty, that's right, a bounty, out there offering $2,000 on information about any ICE officer and $10,000 for those who kill an ICE officer. Now, keep in mind, this information is not for kicks and giggles. It is not for a game of Trivial Pursuit. That information, for which the cartel member would pay $2,000, is there so that others can kill an ICE officer and get $10,000. That's what that is. Can you discuss what protections are essential to ensuring the safety of ICE officers and their families, and why requirements to display personal information and prohibiting them from ever wearing any kind of covering would represent a totally unacceptable, indefensible risk to their public safety?
Senator Lee, our federal agents have been doxxed, and many of you know what that means. It has happened to you on both sides of the aisle. Our federal agents' lives have been threatened. We fought, well, we spoke with Apple and Google to get the ICE Block app taken down. That was reckless and criminal in that people were posting where ICE officers lived. We worked with both Apple and Google to take that down.
It's stunning, I would add here, that it took as much work as it did by you to get them to take that down. Remember, in the days following January 6th, they took down all kinds of things, including a social media app called Parler, based on very thin evidence that was later largely rebutted, suggesting that people had been manipulating Parler in order to plan the January 6th attack. That wasn't true, and they took it down. I'm glad they have taken this Block ICE app down, but it's a shame that it took as long as it did, and as much work on your part to get them to take it down.
I will tell you they were cooperative, and to correct myself, it was where they were going, the jobs they were doing. And that's what's been happening, because hundreds of organized rioters, Senator Lee, are showing up where our ICE officers are. And as you know, they have fireworks, they have gas masks. You know, they don't want our officers to be protected with their identity, yet they're wearing gas masks, they're wearing goggles, and they're
So it's okay for them to be safe. It's okay for Antifa to be safe. It's okay for those doing the bidding of international violent drug cartels to be safe. But heaven forbid, our ICE officers should be safe.
Thank you, Senator Lee.
Time has expired. Senator Coons, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn, and thank you to the committee for holding this oversight hearing. And Attorney General Bondi, thank you for your service and for being with us. I want to start with an area where I think we have a lot to agree on. In May, your Bureau of Prisons issued a directive to expand the availability of home confinement. The directive said it was rooted in the principle of smart, fair criminal justice reform, and explained that smart reform and public safety can go hand in hand. and that second chances are not just possible, they're necessary for a justice system worthy of the American people. There's more to do to implement this directive, but I appreciated the BOP's recognition of these principles. Could you briefly speak further about the work BOP Director Marshall and Deputy Director Smith, himself a former inmate, are doing with regard to reform and what opportunities you see for us to do more?
Thank you, Senator Coons. And you have been a champion of that, and we believe in second chances. As a career prosecutor, I know that most people, even violent criminals, are going to be locked up and then they're going to be released. And that's why we need everyone to be a productive member of society. I believe in halfway houses, and that's part of what the First Step Act did. It gives people a second chance at life, and that's what Billy Marshall and Josh Smith have been doing, working hand in hand at the Bureau of Prisons. I talk to them constantly, and they are working so hard. In fact, they inherited a dysfunctional and neglected agency, and they are taking, despite more than $450 million being appropriated between 2019 and 2024, we found that funds had been diverted away from the Department of the Prisons, the Bureau of Prisons. And so they are doing everything to create more halfway houses and to give inmates everything they need to be successful upon release, but also by keeping America safe. And I just learned from Billy Marshall, we just made an incredible case that someone, I believe the case was in Texas, one of our federal prisons, no one was monitoring this. And there was someone who was caught with a drone dropping off recently cell phones, paraphernalia.
Let me follow up on that point, if I might, Attorney
Many
General.
things that could cause violence within our prisons and allow criminal cartel networks to function within our federal prisons. And that's what a lot of this money is going for, to make our prisons safe within and so these criminals cannot function while they are in prison. But one good thing I can also add is we have given inmates, I think we've over doubled the amount of minutes they can have on their phones so they can talk to their family members, because we believe that is important.
One of the challenges federal probation officers face is massive caseloads. And I am about to introduce, hopefully reintroduce soon, a bill with Senator Lee that would improve our federal supervised release system by focusing resources on those who really need to be supervised and providing incentives to reduce oversight of those who've really made progress and who've changed the direction of their lives. It is broadly supported by law enforcement and a variety of policy groups, and I'd love to work with you on that, Madam Attorney General.
Yeah, Senator, can I just add, because I just got the numbers. So what we have is $8.7 billion for the Bureau of Prisons, and what that does is it adds 587 correctional officers to help with the things that we just discussed. $95 million for new hires. We have to recruit and we have to retain. We know that's a really tough job to be a corrections officer, and that's why Josh Smith is such a valuable part of that team with Billy Marshall. And I would welcome working with you on that. And President Trump is the one who signed the First Step Act because he believes in second chances. We all do. Thank you, Senator Coons, for that question.
One of the things I have been concerned, even upset about, is how early in this administration, at the behest of DOJ, the department cut hundreds of grants totaling hundreds of millions of dollars, many of which serve critical public safety needs, supporting victims, assisting with reentry, violence prevention, including in my own home state. This was literally defunding the police. And I have some concerns about how DOJ is putting at risk public safety by assigning thousands of agents and prosecutors away from drugs, firearms, corruption, violent crime to help ICE arrest people without criminal records. You've indicated a willingness to review any grant that a member of Congress has concerns about, and noted a number of them have been restored on appeal. And I appreciate that willingness to admit some misjudgments or mistakes in some of the many grants that were canceled. But can you assure us this process is going to be fixed going forward so better decisions are made at the start and not just after appeals? And can you assure us that we are not leaving doors wide open for crime and criminality in our communities and over-focusing on arrest and deportation of those without criminal records?
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. And as I said earlier, we are reviewing all the grants, and I believe we have, I say, turned some back on for senators who have called. It doesn't matter what state you're from. If it's a law enforcement grant, if it's protecting victims, let us know and we will work with you. And I'm not sure if we have done any in your state yet, but I would be happy to work with you on that. What I can tell you is there have been, out of the 5,800 discretionary grants that were reviewed, only 376 around the country, 7% were terminated. 225 of the grant recipients have appealed that termination. And so far, we've turned back on 18 of those. 17 appeals have been denied, and the rest are being actively reviewed. If any of you know of any of those that you believe should be turned back on, call me. We don't want to jeopardize anything that's hurting. Please do. And Senator, to go to what you said about the FBI and my federal agencies and being pulled to work on immigration cases, they're working hand in hand because we believe that, you know, we have ICE officers out there, as we just discussed. I don't want to repeat that, who are being harmed. We're going to work with them, and I've directed all of my law enforcement agencies to work with ICE to make sure they're safe in Chicago, to make sure they're safe in Memphis, to make sure they're safe right here in Washington, D.C., but also at President Trump's direction. We are not stopping the core function of what we're doing, and that is fighting violent crime. And I think Director Patel made that very clear with all of the arrests that our FBI have been making on violent criminals. And, you know, there's so much that we can't talk about here, but if any of you are on the Intel Committee, you know we are fighting terrorists around this country every single day. Our lawyers are shut down right now. They're not getting paid. The crime is not stopping. They're working around the clock to not only keep our country safe, Senator, but to keep our world safe. And
Madam Attorney General, I think all of us hate that there's a shutdown and its impact on the federal workforce, and are working to find a way out of this shutdown, but one that will also restore cuts to health care. We could spend a lot of time on that, but let's focus on, if I could, two more questions.
We're listening in here to Senator.
Senateur Koun, c'est une démocrate qui a fait débat ça avec l'ancien Jeffrey Hakim, qui c'est membre commission démocrate, parce que c'est leader minorité au niveau de la Chambre des députés, et puis avec sénateur Soumet, qui lui-même représenté au niveau Sénat comme leader minorité tout pour Parti démocrate là. On connaît chaque jour parler concernant shutdown ça en temps de déclaration, député Jeffrey Hakim.
Who thankfully were released, as well as the families of those whose loved ones were tragically killed in Gaza. 2 years later, it's incredibly important that every single hostage is returned, and returned at the same time. It's important that we restore the ceasefire that Donald Trump inherited and that was broken in a matter of weeks during the Trump presidency. It's important that the devastation in Gaza end, and that we surge humanitarian assistance into Gaza to provide relief to Palestinian civilians who for 2 years have been in harm's way in a theater of war through no fault of their own. And it's important that we find a just and lasting peace that can be implemented for the good of the people of Israel, our close ally, and for the good of the Palestinian people, so that we have Israel and the Palestinian people living side by side in peace, security, and prosperity. This is day 7 of the Trump shutdown of the federal government. And Democrats in the House and Democrats in the Senate continue to hold the line on behalf of the American people. Why? because we're fighting to protect their health care in the midst of a crisis that has been inflicted upon them by Republicans from the very beginning of Donald Trump's presidency. Republicans have hurt everyday Americans in order to reward their billionaire donors. That's what the one big ugly bill was all about. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Stole food from the mouths of children, seniors, and hungry veterans in order to provide massive tax breaks, permanent in nature, to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Democrats have a very different approach to what we should be doing in order to make life better for the American people. And at this moment in time, that's addressing the Republican.
We're listening in here to House Minority Leader